You can see it with our divorce rates. You can see it with just guys online complaining about women. There's that documentary that was on Netflix last year, and it was all about the rise of incels. And they talked about how, there's like 80% of dudes are incels now or something. And there's so many guys. There's all these numbers out there about guys who have never had sex and they're in their 30s, and how that rate is rising, and how it's very disturbing and all this kind of stuff. But when you realize that, and then you hear guys complaining online and talking about MGTOW and the juice isn't worth the squeeze, it just reinforces the idea that, yeah, I think Doc Love and Corey Wayne might be right. I think there's probably 97% of dudes are average frustrated chumps. They say 80% of dudes are completely invisible to women. But that's because all these guys, they lack game, frame, and purpose in life. Okay. And so once you realize that, and you're like, oh, okay, let me work on my money, muscles, game, and frame, and get in a little bit of better shape and stuff like that. Like I'm going to be able to compete. I'm going to be able to compete, and not only compete, I'm going to be able to win. Okay. We got a brother in Wolfpack right now, Brother Omega. I don't know if he's in the chat. I haven't looked at the chat yet. Brother Omega is absolutely killing it on the dating circuit. And if you looked at Omega a year ago, or I don't know how long he's been in the group, 2 years now. When you first met him, you were like, this guy's striking out with women left and right. And he's constantly, just like, a year or two later in the Wolfpack, he's posting date updates where he's getting laid constantly. He just posted one the other day. He's like, oh, this plate that I was spinning a couple of years ago reached out to me. I invited her over. We had indoor Olympics, and now I'm off to the gym. Right? Like that's like Omega? Like what? You know what I mean? But we know him now, and we're like, oh yeah, Omega's a total pimp, right? But he wasn't a year ago until he learned the skills. Okay. By the way, guys, I have a free ebook. If you guys are getting over a breakup, and you're struggling on the dating circuit, and you're starting to look at your ex like she's low-hanging fruit, and maybe you want her back, I'll show you how to get her back. Okay. There's a proven method of getting your ex back. I lay it all out here in this ebook, but I also explain why that's a terrible idea. Okay. So get the ebook. I'll show you how to get her back. I'll show you how to reattract her, but I'll also explain why that's the worst idea possible. Okay. It's the first link in the description, or if you go to ebook.getoveryourx.us, you can get it there. So let's talk about fat equals failure. Okay. So if you ever read Rollo's book, right? So I just mentioned Royce. If you ever read Rollo's book, The Player's Handbook, it's a phenomenal book. It's probably one of my favorite books that Rollo's written. He estimates that 75% of men are overweight or obese nowadays. Okay. So if that's true, and if you just go around and look around, it's pretty accurate. Now in my area, out here in the cow pasture, there's a lot of corn-fed white boys out here. Okay. There's a lot of corn-fed white boys out here. And it makes sense because we live out here by Olathe, Colorado. The world's best sweet corn comes from Olathe. And so there's a lot of corn-fed white boys out here that are obese, overweight. And so just not being fat automatically puts me in the top 25% of dudes out here. Okay. And it's fascinating to watch. One of the things I learned from Dr. Robert Glover in his book, Dating Essentials for Men, was the idea of setting up a dating profile, but as a woman, so that you can see what your competition looks like. Right. And just go out there and look at the other guys on dating apps in your area, and you'll realize there's really no competition. And for me, a lot of that is just because there's a lot of overweight, chubby guys with fish pics, right? That's why I always joke, and I just put it out on a meme yesterday, and I put it out when I was promoting the show yesterday, that your competition isn't some 6'5" Giga Chad Adonis, all right? It's a 5'8" chubby guy with fish pics in his bio, okay? That's your competition. And whenever I tell guys on social media, hey, putting fish pics in your bio does not help you on the dating circuit. You're better off not having fish pics in your bio. Guys lose their mind. They will fight tooth and claw to put fish pics in their bio. I want that fish pic. It shows women that I'm a hunter and a gatherer and I can get food in an emergency. Like, that's not how women think. nowadays, guys. They're not looking for a hunter-gatherer type. Okay. We live in modern society. We have grocery stores. Women aren't thinking about that kind of shit. All right. They might have during COVID for a hot second when they were looking for a warlord, and they thought that we're going into Armageddon, but we didn't. It was the whole COVID lockdown thing was one big nothing burger, right? And so yeah, women are back to living their normal life, and they're like, yeah, holding fish is not sexy to them, for most women. Okay. So that's your competition. It's guys who are absolutely clueless, and they're fighting tooth and nail to stay clueless. Okay. That's your competition out there. Okay. By the way, speaking of chubby fat guys with fish pics, have any of you let yourself get out of shape, been out dating, and then got back into shape and noticed a significant difference? Okay. Let me know in the chat or the comments if you've ever experienced this. Because once you experience this, it'll blow your mind. All right. Because that's how I was when I got divorced back in 2014. And I talk about this a lot. Whenever I'm a guest on a podcast, people usually ask me my Batman origin story. And I always tell them that when I first got divorced, I floundered for like 11 months on the dating circuit. Didn't have a clue. Okay. I had been out of practice dating for like 15 years at that point. I was waiting for written invitations from women, and women don't do that. Women are very subtle. And I just did not know what the fuck I was doing, right? And then after Red Pill Chick, because I got back into shape while I was dating Red Pill Chick, because I was just sick of how I looked in the mirror. I was just really annoyed by how I looked in the mirror. And I made a promise to myself back in 2016 that I would never get that heavy again. And so since then I haven't. I've gained weight. I've lost weight since then, but I've always stayed within the boundaries that I've set for myself, right? And I've always worked out. I work out Monday through Friday, no matter what. I haven't stopped that since 2016. Even if it's just going for a walk, I still go out and do something, right? And so I've done that since 2016. Now, sometimes my diet goes to shit. And that's what gets me in trouble. But usually I might keep my diet in check too. And when I got done, when I broke up with Red Pill Chick and I found myself on the dating circuit that time, I was 50 pounds lighter, and it was easy to get dates. It was like shooting fish in a barrel. I just couldn't keep these chicks around longer than 2 or 3 dates because I was being too needy and I was pushing for a relationship, and I had the sniper dating mentality, right? And so once I broke myself of that bad habit, I was able to spin plates. I was able to keep chicks around. I was able to keep a rotation going. It was a totally different experience. And a lot of that was because I lost all the weight, right? So if Rollo's right, and like 70 to 75% of dudes out there are obese or overweight, then just not being fat puts you in the top 25% of guys. Okay. Top 25% of guys. Now, let's talk about why frame is everything. Okay. So going back to what Royce was talking about here, he had a couple of guys who on paper, most guys would be like, yeah, these guys are alphas, right? These are alpha males. They probably clean up on the dating circuit, but they all sucked with chicks. And a lot of that for a vast majority of guys is they have no frame. They have no frame. Okay. Most men totally bend to women's frame. And God, I was on MLD show a couple months ago, right? And MLD was talking about how, especially in the West, women just have much stronger frame than men out here in the West, but we're raised that way, right? We're raised in this gynocentric social order where women are taught to be boss babes and you go queen, and you deserve this and all this kind of stuff. And men, we're told how terrible we are and how, the patriarchy and toxic masculinity, and we're all just told that being a man in general is bad, right? And so we're raised with this paradigm of putting women on pedestals, deferring to women, trying to make them happy all the time. And so we are almost all operating in women's frame constantly. But the guys who are really good with women have very strong, solid frame. They're able to set boundaries. They hold frame, and women love those guys because they are able to relax into their feminine and enter that man's frame and feel safe and secure. Okay. But most guys just lack any kind of frame. They're very emotional. They might not be crying all the time, but they're definitely they get pissed off at the drop of a hat. They're always angry. Do you know a guy who's got anger problems? A guy who just every little thing sets him off, every little thing he gets offended by and he wants to fight. I used to be that guy. If you ever talk to my ex-wife, she'll tell you Paul's got anger issues. And she wasn't wrong. I did have anger issues in our marriage, and I would always blame it on her. Well, she's the one that pushes my buttons and stuff like that. But if you have strong mental frame, nobody can push your buttons. People push your buttons because you let them push your buttons. Okay. It's up here, the meaning you put behind things. Okay. Otherwise, like what they're doing, if you look at them like they're the goofy goofballs that they are, and if you look at women like they're the most responsible teenager in the house, you don't take them so damn seriously. There's a reason why I put out a lot of like misogynistic memes out there. Is it because I'm a misogynist? That's why. No, because when you do adopt a little bit of misogyny and you stop taking women so seriously, you actually get better with women. You actually get better with women because you maintain frame and you don't enter their frame. Okay. And so if you always look at them like they're goofy bastards and whatever, like you actually get better with them. They like you better. It's really funny.
New episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Subscribe now.